All right, well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on this Black Friday Cyber Monday recap in terms of a little postmortem for all of us. Thank you for being here. I'm going to tag all of you in the post so people will know who you are. I think they should know who many of you are since you're heavy contributors in the Facebook and Instagram Pro Ad Buyers group anyway. Which is a little group that turns out is really helpful for a lot of people, and just started on a whim in March. So it's been really cool actually, and I think it's probably one of the main reasons why Facebook started listening to us more, which was the intent of it in the first place. So that's helpful. Well, let's go ahead and just get started talking about Black Friday, Cyber Monday thematically, and starting with what people's thoughts are. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about, kind of ROAS being lower, but revenues being higher, and starting a little bit softer. The person that I've had a lot of discussion with it about thus far has actually been Alex Afterman. So I'm going to start with Alex, and would love your take, Alex, as it relates to kind of thinking about the overall weekend. And go from there.
Sure. So, I mean, actually, in retrospect now, looking back on it, I feel like it actually went quite well, but there were definitely some very rough patches. So last year, most of my clients just kind of had a really good Black Friday and just carried it through the weekend. And then like Cyber Monday was better than the weekend, but the weekend was still pretty good. Mm-hmm. This year, it felt like the weekend just cratered.
Yeah,
and that caused a lot of stress and a lot of like client stress and me stress and, watching your family like celebrate the holiday and you're sitting here like, why aren't people buying my stuff? But it's funny. So Cyber Monday went really well. It started off slow, like talk about adding to nerve wracking, right? It started out really slow for me. And then the momentum just swelled and almost like a significant portion of the revenue came in late, which makes it really hard to make decisions, right? If you're coming off a soft weekend and you're thinking where, do I scale, do I not scale? And then it's soft in the morning as well. You kind of have to take it on faith a little bit. I actually think that we could have done more revenue yesterday if we had been able to take it on faith. The money's coming, and if the weekend had been a little stronger. But it did go really well. It's funny, I like last year I felt like the weekend stayed strong, but this year I'm sitting here stressing out about why people aren't buying on the weekend. And meanwhile, my wife and my sister are in the other room and they're on their phone looking at all these deals. This is Saturday, and they have a notepad out and they're literally writing down all these deals they like, and they're like, because it's going to be better on Monday. So
right.
I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it was for the weekend was really hard, and like from an emotional standpoint, it's hard because as a buyer, people are asking you like, what's going on. And then Thursday, you always get impatient on Thanksgiving because remember do you remember like 2 years ago when nobody even launched sales on Thanksgiving? And I remember like pre-Deirdre, you working with Blenders, I remember running it like started on Black Friday at 6 a.m. And like, it was a novel idea to start on Thanksgiving evening. That was like not a thing. And, these are back in the olden days, like 4 years ago or whatever. But then definitely on Cyber Monday, it was a big part. It was like obviously a big part of it. I had a client that same thing. They were revenue. They were like at a 3x or something when I went to bed finally, like 10:30, and I woke up and it was an 8.5x. And I was like, I would have turned that up so hard, But I did do a lot of auto bidding too, which we switched off of, which I think is a big theme. And speaking of auto bidding, I know Deirdre, you've always been a fan of auto bidding. You guys you don't generally do manual bidding. And by the way, you can't see him, but Terry Whalen's also on the call, colleague and friend who's an awesome guy from Some Digital. You guys obviously run huge accounts. What are your take? What's your take, Deirdre, of kind of how it all went?
Yeah, I did see a lot of what Alex was saying. So this year, typically we always start on Thanksgiving, and that's kind of moved earlier and earlier in the day the last few years. But this year with Black Friday being so late, we started on Monday and Tuesday for Blenders and Pure Vita. And those early days were just so huge for us and, really strong ROAS, but it definitely then ate into what we saw on other days. So like Black Friday was still our biggest day, but it wasn't as big as we expected it to be. And same with like Saturday was incredibly slow, and I use all auto. So even though I get up pretty early with like the East Coast during these days, the spend kind of like got away from me. Just like, just kind of ran off the tracks, and it was just really hard to like manually throttle down, even though I had immediately like halved budgets late on Friday night. So it was just kind of interesting. Then Sunday we kind of gained that efficiency back, and then Cyber Monday started really badly. So it was like, what
pretty tough.
You're not. And looking back, Paul from Pure Vita was kind of doing it like an hourly analysis, and I think like a third of our sales for the entire, like the sale is still going. This is day 9, I think. And 30% of our sales were done between like the hours of 5 and 8 p.m. PST. So it's just pretty crazy how concentrated it is in those hours. And then, you're trying to make budget decisions early in the day. For those accounts, I did take off CBO. I know you've heard me like be a proponent of that in the past. But it was, I just didn't have the confidence to leave it on. Like you just need so much time and like data and consistency for that to do well. And with just kind of like the shifting offers and the spikes in sales, it just needed that like manual override to throttle. So I was probably tweaking budgets like every like 3 to 4 hours for that, like, 8 or 9 days. So it was a lot.
I'm with you on a lot of that. But my opinion aside, Kurt, what did you see and what do you think? Kurt, I know you handle a lot of accounts. And so you have a lot of different verticals of all different sizes too, which I think is why it's so awesome you're part of this discussion. What did you see overall? What are your thoughts?
So my experience was pretty similar in a lot of ways. I saw that so for all my accounts that started before Thanksgiving, it was like bonus days. ROAS was really high, volume was really high. And that carried, it dipped down a bit on Thanksgiving, which was strong. Black Friday peaked. And then we had a real difficult time pretty much across the board, like you guys were saying, over the weekend. And so in many of my ad accounts, I cut the budget way down over the weekend and then sort of push what we had allocated for the weekend over to Monday and Tuesday.
It's about exactly what I did.
Yep. So we just kind of shuffled that around. And then Monday, like everybody else said, started real slow. People were emailing me, questioning our budget choices for the day and whether things were going to work out. And it just gradually peaked. For me, it peaked probably between 7 and 9. We just had a rush of sales come in, which was great to see. But like you guys had said, it was hard to budget for that. Interestingly, I was looking at like some of the accounts where I had CBO enabled for Cyber Monday, and I saw that the spend actually sort of mimicked that a bit. It was spending slower in the morning, and in the evening, the spend had picked up. So that was good to see. Most of my accounts, I was running ABO though. But that was interesting to see because I didn't have much confidence in CBO overall either. I felt like I needed to have a few more levers to pull, right, to make sure that things went okay.
Yeah, it's interesting on kind of the CBO thing where it did have it did actually where I had it deployed, it did actually allocate the spend on prospecting better. That's another whole thing that like prospecting generally has never done that great on this time of year. And like, I woke up to like 4 or 5x on prospecting in some cases of like 10% lookalikes or a 4% lookalike of, it's just like, what? Like this is, in some cases it was like even with remarketing, which I found really surprising. And also the other thing that I have to admit just publicly, you know, I've always liked a very low funnel cost per click bid at this time. And like that didn't really do anything. Like I had one account that it actually beat out the auto, but everywhere else on Friday it was not as positive as just doing auto, which is really funny and is good that auto works. I won't really want to have to do a manual bid. I'd rather it would just work, and it actually did in most cases. Even when you pushed volume, it did spend more to the group of people, which I thought was good. But Paul, what do you think? I mean, I know you obviously a lot of your stuff's not even U.S. centric. What's your take on it?
I think first of all we should acknowledge the new holiday tradition that Facebook has started, the annual Facebook outage day every Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's very true. At least we had the chat support, you know, at least, I mean, or a status monitor at least.
The status monitor, which I don't think we'd get to see it in action so soon. But luckily, you know, me going around like predicting doom for months and telling my clients to book all their campaigns ahead, they actually thanked me afterwards when they realized that after the 23-hour outage last year and then the outage this year, that we're not just kind of like fear-mongering, that you've actually got to get your campaigns. I mean, I saw the first ad campaigns for Black Friday on November the 2nd, on like a Sunday or something like that. And so definitely things are moving earlier. I also saw for the first time Singles Day campaigns, like not that many, but in the US and UK, 11/11 Singles Day. That seems to be the new holiday creeping up, with Cyber Monday being so late this year. Mm-hmm. So definitely a lot of the revenue was going earlier in the sort of trading period there. So yeah, I started most of my campaigns on Wednesday, started off really strong and yeah, just carried on and then died over the weekend a little bit. Cyber Monday, not that much because we didn't really have any fresh campaigns. It's like, you know, you're on day 5 or day 6 of the same sale. So it kind of just kind of faded a little bit there. So I think starting early, that kind of Wednesday and Thursday, like Kurt's saying, it's like bonus days. So that kind of worked well. In terms of audiences, engagement audiences work really well this time, like a 90-day Instagram engagement audience. They're kind of a nice in between rather than like just website visitors or completely cold traffic. They're kind of in between. And I also segmented out my dynamic product ad audiences. So really, really strong audience was 180-day add to carts, just running DPA ads to them. Like, you know, these people, if they've added to cart, they want to buy, but maybe they haven't bought because the price was too high. So it's like just scoot them all up into DPA really well. Second best one was a view content DPA, again, 180 days. You know, those super warm audiences, just that's where you can use dynamic product ads, worked really well with them.
Yeah, I had a hard time with dynamic product ads in some cases. I would say in about 30 to 40% of the accounts, they just weren't driving conversions. And I was wondering if it was like there's latency or what, but I don't know if anybody else had that experience. I also had really good experience on the engagement. To comment on that engagement custom audience, I created a lot of engagement lookalike audiences, like if they had a lot of Instagram stories running, we would do like a 50% Instagram story video view and a lookalike off of that, which is like a random lookalike, obviously, that I've started to test a little bit more. And that did well, like more specific lookalikes, not just like an all purchaser lookalike. The all purchaser stuff did all right too. But I thought that was kind of interesting because more of that stuff is owned by Facebook. It's not just pixel and website related. It's like, you really have it there. Terry, any comments you want to make with being the headless one on here?
Let's see. No, I basically kind of, would just reiterate what everyone else has said so far. Definitely it was the right call to start early. I did have a good sized client who didn't want to start early. And I think that hurt us a little bit. We still grew like whatever, 80 or 90% year over year. And Facebook ROAS was still roughly the same as it was a year ago. And so everything was fine. But I think this year was it was a smart idea to start early because there's just no downside. And especially when Black Friday is so late in the month. So I would, I agree with that. And then, it's just tough to call, on, intraday budgets. It's just tough to do. and then everything looks so much better the next day or, 48 hours later. And, no matter how much you do this stuff professionally, it's still not easy on these big sale days.
Mm-hmm.
So just to acknowledge that.
But overall ROAS,
for
you guys, overall ROAS was okay. Just to comment on that briefly, because I had a number of people contacting me saying, hey, ROAS is down on Facebook and we're pushing more, revenues are higher, but we're not making as much money.
I would say that ROAS was lower, but that was from the perspective of, say on Saturday morning, looking at Friday and then comparing that to the year ago. So that's not really apples to apples comparison, right? Because there's still a lot of latency on that day. And it's kind of arguably too early to even do that for yesterday, Cyber Monday. But yes, I would say for sure, except that then when I would just look at longer periods of time, the ROAS wasn't that far off from a year ago's numbers, and we were spending, close to double what we had a year ago, in most accounts, if not more than double.
I think I think a lot of people will be glad to hear that. I didn't mean to cut you off. I do want to hear about what audiences worked for you too. But I think that's important to point out because obviously latency has something to do with it. And there's I was talking yesterday with a colleague about when ROAS looks lower, agencies will do sometimes funny things and like I heard an example of somebody, Alex, you were talking about it earlier, of uploading offline conversions, just, I don't know, to me seems a little sketchy personally. But I think people get creative. And I think, Terry, what you're saying is, it's just not that much different and waiting for the latency because it's so much spend too. My God. I mean, how many of these people are going to be introduced to the brand and convert over the holiday? A lot.
Yeah. And I think that usually, at least for us marketers here on the call, for most of our clients and certainly for e-com, Facebook, Instagram, that's the biggest paid channel by a really long shot. And so it's just not that it's such a big paid channel and that we all know there's such a good cause and effect. And we just know that it drives revenue. So that just continually checking against just overall website wide revenue and having a little bit of understanding about what emails are going out, on certain days or times of days, to put it in context. But anyway, but even when Facebook ROAS would be low, right, you're always just looking at just, Shopify or whatever is your true north. And then that helps you, not lose your cool too much in terms of, seeing these low ROAS numbers intraday.
Right. Alex, anybody else, any comments on anything that we've been chatting about here?
Yeah, just referring to like the delayed attribution that came in. So like on one account that spending, I think we spent, I wanted to spend like $80,000 or $90,000 on Sunday. The client was like, we just can't do that with the numbers we're seeing. So we cut it back to 60. When I went to bed, the ROAS was 1.4. And I was thinking to myself, like, we're going to have a conversation about this tomorrow. And this is going to be, I think I even texted you about it over the weekend. And when all was said and done at the end of, when I went to bed last night, the ROAS from Sunday was over 2. It's all, I think if we, in my mind, I'm starting to reframe the weekend as, how our general holiday strategy is fill the funnel before the big sale, right?
Right.
A lot of work to fill the funnel, and that's going to pay off later. I feel like Saturday and Sunday this year was kind of like a mini version of that. There's a huge buying frenzy through Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, people are looking at deals and then they're going to come back Monday to convert. And so I actually see that Sunday as a missed opportunity in not having spent more. But it's just a hard conversation to have when the numbers aren't there. I didn't do a great job of setting expectations because I felt like last year it was just strong all the way through. Maybe if I'd said something like, think of Saturday and Sunday as another little mini fill of the funnel where we're looking less at ROAS because that will pay off. But that's also a gamble, right? It worked out in this account this time, but I cannot tell you I went to bed Sunday night thinking we're going to end up over a 2 today when it's all said and done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I feel like the decision making was harder than ever this year.
Yeah. Anybody comment on that?
Yeah, quick comment. I was looking at, so I was seeing the same thing with DPA ads, really slow start.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled up the, attribution, like 1 day and 7 day attribution, and it, looking right now, it was close to 40-60 in terms of 1 day versus 7 day. So I was having more sales come through after that first day on many of these, especially the DPA ads. And so it's interesting to take that into consideration.
Yeah. What's everyone's take on a discussion point, technically speaking, with dynamic creative or asset placement customization or dynamic headlines or anything? Has anybody see anything there that was of particular note?
I would just say for the dynamic stuff, we definitely saw social proof even during the sale when you think the offer is just strong enough that they'll click and not necessarily need to read through the comments to hear how great it is. But even when we switched to a stronger offer on Cyber Monday, we had to keep some of those top Black Friday ads on just because they had accumulated like thousands of likes and a lot of tags and everything. So they were still bringing in a higher ROAS, even though some of them had been live since Monday. So it was like 7 days on, and you think it'd be fatigued considering the scale. So for us, we weren't doing any asset placement customization because you can't do that with like the photo posts we do. We still do the bit.ly links and everything. So yeah, we have those really old school ads, and it's just kind of geared for like engagement and maximum real estate, I guess. And definitely as a user, like all the news feeds and stories especially was just so bloated with ads. Like the ad load was higher than I've ever noticed it being.
Yeah.
It with my own ads at least like 10 times a day. So yeah, I just think you need to be really careful. Like the UBC was really important for us. So just kind of like adding our own like native text overlays to IG stories and just anything you can do to not come across like too like corporate and highly polished was really important. And then on the other side for us, like dynamic ads, in terms of like broad DPA especially, that was a huge area of skill for us. I think it was, for 50% in some cases of our prospecting. So we did see good success there. And we did kind of experiment with some overlays, like some 10% lookalike overlays, including a 10% lookalike of people who bought during this time last year.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a good ROAS, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure in the end, and it's still going, but I'm pretty sure that just the broad with like no overlays is still winning out, still is the best ROAS. So I did keep CBO on for that just to manage that a little bit.
Well, I'll just say, damn you that you can get broad match to work so well. That's not the case with a lot of people. I think a lot of it is because people's feeds aren't very good and there's a lot of errors, but that's awesome that they can work. And generally, of course, that lookalike of people that bought last year is good. And then the one that I'm sure all of you did this, where you took the Thursday buyers and the Friday buyers and then made it as a lookalike through the weekend. And that does really well. And that's definitely something that we saw last year do well too. Which is good. We had a lot of separation of Instagram stories, which I was a little bit nervous about from a consolidation standpoint. Well, you guys know I'm not like a major consolidation guy, but I wanted, I had some doing asset placement customization and that bombed. So didn't work. So I did it on Instagram stories separately, and then it ended up working with what you're talking, the type of creative you're talking about, Deirdre, with like, stuff that looks kind of UGC and with polls usually and stuff like that. I do find it funny that like the bigger the brand, the worse the ads. Like it's just is hilarious. Like some of these ads I saw from brands, I'm like, why would I buy a fleece lined flannel? I just like, it doesn't look like something I'd buy. Like the guy's holding onto like a metal, like cooking pot. I'm like, what are you even selling? Like it's just weird stuff like that. That is always very surprising. I feel like the people that really like make the best ads are a lot of these brands that are spending under $70,000 a month US.
Yeah, I think that's like been a struggle when we have clients that scale up really quickly and sort of bring on like a brand director and a brand marketing team or creative or art director. It's just they want everything to be so in line, like always the same fonts, always the same aesthetic, and it's just not necessarily, not that it's just highly polished and looks like an ad from the get-go, but it's often just not eye-catching because they don't want to do anything kind of like tacky at all, which is typically what does well on Facebook, just loud colors, like red is great for a sale. And they just want to avoid all of that. And it's all about the pastels and like the heavily filtered photos. And it just doesn't pop.
That is true. Brand directors love pastels.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about auto bidding. We've talked about different audiences that people used. Anybody else? Terry, I think I cut you off previously at talking about audiences, and that's my apologies. Did you want to talk about that briefly, or anybody else have comments on the different audience splits in terms of remarketing that you had over this time period?
Yeah, for audiences, I mean, I kind of just believe in like everything but the kitchen sink in terms of, going back as far as you can with just website visitors or engaged users or, any way you want to slice and dice all that stuff, add to carts, viewed content. So I would say I don't necessarily have a ton of new ad sets that I didn't already have running necessarily. I'll probably just have a couple of new ad sets for remarketing to website visitors or past purchasers or what have you. And I don't segment out a lot. So I do kind of go back far because it's like, yeah, if they showed any interest at all, yeah, we want to show them ads during Black Friday and this holiday period. But I don't do a ton of segmenting out, which I don't think I lose efficiency by not segmenting. I think it's all good. And then in terms of just other prospecting audiences, I basically ended up not tweaking those. I didn't expand my prospecting audiences and ad sets. I didn't add to them, and I didn't expand them. They were already fairly large audiences. And I used CBO, and I think CBO did a good job of allocating budgets based on, ROAS.
You didn't even change the ad itself.
Oh, no, the creative I for sure changed. I'm just talking about audiences.
Got it. You didn't mess with that at all. Okay. Paul or Kurt, anything to say about audiences specifically?
I mean, obviously I advertise worldwide, and certainly Australia was really strong. UK was good. Certainly like basically non-US does a lot better over Black Friday. So that was quite interesting. Also, just like a random thing, but one of my clients that wasn't doing a Black Friday sale, we put some specific ads out there saying, hey, we sell at the same price all year. Don't wait for the sale because there isn't going to be one. We treat everybody fairly. And those ads did really well. So, a lot of people like just waiting to buy until Black Friday are quite understandably to get the best deals. So if you let them know that that's the best price all year round, that can really help. If you're one of those advertisers,
that's cool.
If you not everybody wants to get into the sales, and if you don't, then point it out and you can get some extra sales from it.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually really interesting because I had a couple of clients that didn't want to do sales. And a couple of years ago, I had a couple of clients that didn't want to do sales, and it did fine, actually. In fact, one of them did really, really well. I think it was like a high-end men's clothing, and we thought it was kind of a status thing, like their customer doesn't want a deal. They want to pay more money because that makes them have higher status. But this year, the clients that didn't run deals really got hurt over the Black Friday weekend. But what I'm thinking about hearing that is, because I told them, look, next year, if you don't want to run a deal, let's just sit out the weekend, like let everybody else fight over that real estate. But I think my strategy for next year would be go heavy in that period in early November when everybody's complaining that nobody's buying because everybody's waiting for deals, with this whole "you're not going to get a deal from us" message. We always have great pricing, right? And then sit it out on the weekend.
Yeah, I think there's, validity in doing that. I think it's really a test of kind of what works for the brand, what's going to make sense for them, and what's going to, do that. I mean, I think what's interesting to me, because of where we sit now as Foxwell Digital, we get, in this time period is like probably like over the weekend, like 200 inbound messages from different people, like from around the world. Like, hey, what is this? Are you seeing this? Like, is this good? Like, where, and we're running our own stuff too. And what's interesting, I think one of the common threads between it is people wondering about their numbers and about how they're going to present the numbers, either to themselves thinking about it, or like if they're an agency running it, like to their clients, and And a lot of them were saying, well, the ROAS looks worse than last year, so I'm going to start to pull out blended. And I'm going to look at GA, and I'm going to look at my Shopify numbers, and I'm going to look at Facebook numbers. I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about this. My feeling generally is if it helps to inform, that's good. However, I think that a lot, kind of what you were getting to yesterday, Paul, with your question in our secret group, is like a lot of people don't know their true numbers. And so they're just looking at Facebook ROAS. When you enter into this conversation, how do you, as an agency, as a buyer, start to have that conversation? Because I think it's easy as an agency to go and to just say, things look good, your blended looks awesome, and just let it roll and like hope that they figure it out. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. I'm just saying I think that's common. So how do you guys approach this? How do you start to have that conversation? Because I think a lot of people are sitting here today and they're saying, hey, the sales were good, we're okay, but like they're not necessarily having that conversation with their actual agency.
So one other thing is, right, we suspect, possibly nobody really knows for sure, that there's attribution issues with Facebook, right, with trackers and whatnot. Yes. It's the whole, it's a very tricky issue because you can't look at each channel individually and say, well, this channel drove these purchases and this channel drove these purchases, because a lot of them will claim the same purchase. So attribution has always been very tricky. I think that my attitude is, if the client is happy with the overall business results and the Facebook numbers look satisfactory, that's a win, right? I'd love it if the Facebook numbers just crushed. But I mean, look, if and I've actually had this, when the Facebook numbers just crushed, but the client's like, I didn't make money. And that could be, a lot of different things. We talked about margins. It could be, very kind of generous attribution on Facebook's part, which I think, for a while it could have happened. But so for me, like, my number one goal is the client is happy. Client is happy with the results in their business, and then the Facebook numbers look good. And if I missed a few sales in that Facebook attribution, but the client is ecstatic with how the sale went, then great. And I think there's got to be better answers out there. There's got to be a better way to really siphon out the results. I don't use things like Supermetrics or Wicked, so maybe they do that. But for me, the bottom line is I want happy clients. And if the client is happy with how things went, and we don't see Facebook as a problem, that's a win for me.
Sure.
For us, it was kind of similar. We're definitely like Shopify revenue was priority. So typically we were working out like a net sales as reported by Shopify versus marketing spend ROAS. And that would be our priority. And then there would also be like a top line sales priority. And then kind of a distant target, which was more to instruct where we were allocating budget in the platform, or if there was headroom to like push more aggressively. That was Facebook ROAS. It just wasn't something clients were concerned with. So as long as, those overall business results were pacing in line with the goals they had set, they were really happy. And thankfully, you know, we did hit all of those targets. On the Facebook side, kind of like we talked about, day-to-day things looked lower than I was used to, starting on Black Friday onwards. But then on the look back, things are strong. So it's yeah, kind of like Black Friday thankfully picked up a lot in the afternoon and evening. And same with Cyber Monday to sort of smooth out that slower weekend numbers. So yeah, in the end, it was good on the Facebook side too. But had we gone off that, we would have spent a lot less for sure. We wouldn't have hit our target.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's always a matter of the balance of like how aggressive do you want to be and what do you know for certain, right? Of like that's actually going to happen with attribution. Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that just in checking the pixel for 2 of my accounts over that weekend, you know, the pixel and Shopify, those were consistent, you know, not looking at just a 1 day, but like a 7-day chunk of time. Those were only, you know, Facebook pixel under reports maybe like say 3% to what Shopify, you know, says. And that's just checking the Facebook pixel, you know, events area. So to me, I think that Facebook slightly is underreporting, but not by a lot. And otherwise, I think Facebook does a really good job. I mean, I think that Facebook reporting is pretty darn accurate. And if obviously we all, you know, we definitely will check between view conversions versus click and different, you know, attribution windows, just as a sanity check from time to time. And then, but I still tell, you know, everyone who will listen that the second you start looking at click-based attribution systems like Google Analytics for channel-specific, you know, data, you know, paid channel-specific data, I just think you're walking down the wrong road, and you're likely to make mistakes because that click-based attribution data is just not good. It's not very good.
Yeah.
So, and then again, I think so, you know, Facebook is the gorilla for a lot of our advertiser clients, and Google is still in there. But again, you know, if you look at Google ads, most of the conversions for most, at least e-com advertisers, are brand related conversions. Right. So whether they're paid search brand or whether they are shopping and the queries are brand related, and the queries may not be the parent brand, they might be queries that actually have the name of the actual product SKU in the query, but that's still brand. So we just run that super efficiently at very low CPAs, very, very high ROAS. And then Google, when you look at non-brand, either search or shopping, you know, we're just running those again, basically trying to run those at parity with Facebook prospecting. So if we tend to run Facebook prospecting at a 2 or a 2.5 or something like that on a certain look back, then we will attempt to do about the same for Google non-brand. We'll, you know, not that those are exactly the same types of channels, but we'll try to run them roughly at parity.
Sure. Well, thank you everyone for joining me. I don't want to take too much of your time, but hopefully people can find this helpful. It'll be in the group, so people can ask questions if they have follow-ups off of this, and I will put all your information in there. But thank you, and congratulations on finishing the race here, or a marathon really now in a lot of cases for a lot of us. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.